Good evening, kapukut, mayem, and doljin lost sevig tuan. Those are greetings in English, kawaya, Miriam, and the last one is Elvish. Sindar and Elvish to be specific. Didn't see that coming, did you? Ngaonel J. Wymarra, and I'm guessing you're wondering what I have to say here tonight. I want to talk to you about how to create community. But which community am I speaking about? Well, that's an interesting question. Some time ago, in a very dark and sort of far-off ancient time called 2013, I was sitting in a bar in Melbourne, and I was with a friend, and we were discussing Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, and so there was quite a nerdgasm in the room. And the table across from us notes this and said to me specifically, "I've never met a nerdy blackfella before." I know. To which I said, "Wait until you see the rest of us." And it only hit me sometime later that I didn't actually know where the rest of us or my community was. I have in my life belonged to and adopted a few different communities so far, ranging from political activism to queer cabaret, niche fan clubs, interest groups, and more formally, the widely accepted and agreed upon epicenter of my ethnicity and my culture. I am, of course, talking about Zenatkes, the Torres Strait Islands. And somehow, with all of this behind me, I'm still single. But all jokes aside, I actually grew up in a lot of different places, not just the island specifically, and with a variety of influences. But right now, I consider Gimoy in North Queensland my home base, which is the main community that I physically occupy. But the thing is, a community doesn't necessarily mean a specific point on the map. It can be many things. It can mean many things. The question is, how do we find our community? How do you find it? So tonight, I'm going to present to you 4 very simple guides that I've collected over the years I've been on this planet. And I humbly offer them to you tonight. All right? So, and just so you know, this is a collection of stories, observations, experiences, theories that I've just put together, because my mind works like an unemployed Susan. So, she's not lazy, she's just between jobs. Feminism. The first point is belonging. So let me ask you a question. What fits you best? Where does your spirit find comfort and ease? Again, where does your spirit find comfort and ease? Surely there are corners of the world where you feel most like yourself. And after all, every ship needs a port. I forgot to mention, there's a lot of nautical references in this too. So just put simply, you will always need somewhere. Belonging is not necessarily about ownership, by the way. No one owns you. You may go wherever you want to go and do whatever makes your heart sing. So belonging, however, does mean to be a part of something. A ritual, a culture, even a pursuit. It's up to you. I personally feel that I belong to more than one community, as I've mentioned, based on the many facets and interest areas of my life. But just to rattle them off for you, I'm a stand-up comic, a drag queen, a First Nations person of this country, a painter, a writer, and a shameless Lord of the Rings fan. Or Tolkien black guy, if you prefer. But none of these defines me specifically, or on their own. They are all shades of the same beautiful, cushy, well-fed person. But of course, each one provides something that the other cannot. And what's more, none of them are exclusive, or should be exclusive. In fact, in my case, there are a great many that intersect and mix and cross-pollinate with each other. But for example, you might be surprised to learn that the community and rituals of Torres Strait Islanders, very similar to hobbits in Lord of the Rings. I'm not joking. Grand events like birthdays are part of everyone's calendar. We trade goods and resources that we have with each other to those who go on great journeys and eventually come back. They're usually welcomed with warmth and love, and I promise you, there is definitely a wizard or two living amongst us. In the queer and drag communities, I'm seen for my sexuality, which is accepted and championed, and I'm treated as one of them with respect and understanding. Belonging comes to those, I believe, who accept it and seek acceptance. Moreover, if you are following a collective association, then it stands to reason that you are bound to a collective purpose. As the old phrase goes, within each man exists a multitude. The trick is identifying the layers of that multitude. And that's the second point, identifying. Identifying your community is where the various difficulties can occur. I'm not going to lie to you. Now, I have to confess something rather personal to you all. I grew up with, I'm ashamed to say, an ingratitude to my ethnic background. I felt it was limited and it would not serve much purpose in my life. It wasn't until around my mid-20s that I discovered that there was a term for this. It's called internalized racism, which simply put means that somewhere along the way, I hated being black. So I get to the Torres Strait Islands, and eventually, because my mum was working with a job that sort of took us around the place, but I get there and I was about 12 years old for the very first time, and I was shocked to find that there were differing qualities of life that I'd experienced between the mainland and elsewhere to here. And the pressure that I felt suddenly was that I had to live up to an already established community, a long developed continuing culture, and I conflicted with that immensely. And honestly, it formed a very toxic sense of self-hatred, a hatred that consumed me for a lot of years. Park that for just a moment, and I'm going to tell you this story. I have a younger brother. He's about 4 years younger than me, and he was raised away from me and my mother during his formative years. But thanks to the brilliant work of my mum, we managed to track him down, and when I came of age, we reached out to him. And after that, I went to visit him on the mainland. When we got together, he could not contain his questions about our mother, about our family, about the islands, about our cultural heritage, where we were from. I couldn't get a word in edgeways. So I suggested we go to his room and we could sit down and we could talk without being interrupted. And that's when I spotted it. On his bookshelf, with a bookmark indicating that he'd read the first 10 pages, was a copy of The Torres Strait, A People and History by the author John Synge. Now, I'd grown up reading this book and I recommend it to you personally to give it a go. I knew exactly what page to look for when I saw it on his bookshelf. In the colored photos was a picture of a man named Carlos Ishua. This man was Mayatetugu, which means great-grandfather. He was more than that, though. He was a cultural authority. He was a lawman, a deacon of his church. My personal favorite, of course, is that he was an amazing traditional dancer and dance instructor. And the photo that I found in the book to show my brother was of him dancing, just mid-flight, looking strong and beautiful with the traditional headdress. It was amazing. From there, I told my brother about our family, our lineage, the entire tree reaching above and below this man, through our mother, and all the way down to he and I in this room right that minute. And everything I remembered about living on the islands. My brother paused for a minute, and he asked me, how did I know all of this? Then I had a flashback to when I told my mother about how much I hated living on the islands. And at that moment, her words came through me to my brother. And it was, you are from somewhere. You have so much that goes into you. There is an entire community that can identify whom and what you are by virtue of what represents you. You are part of this big thing, and this thing is part of you. So your identity is in your hands to express and manifest how you see fit, and your community should represent the best of you. It should resound with and validate you, and most importantly, it should provide an anchor for you by allowing you to be seen in the space you occupy. And that's point number 3, occupying. I'm not sweating, the top of my mouth is crying. Now, as you watch this later on, sitting in this auditorium or the classroom or the community center, workplace, or even the bedroom late at night where you currently live, which, let's be honest, that's where I watch my TED Talks, what you're doing is not watching or listening. You're actually taking up space. Perhaps a friend shouted you a ticket for tonight. Maybe you need to crash on that friend's couch while you're watching that video. Or you could have gotten the job in the workplace where you're watching this on your lunch break through some hiring scheme or through the merits of your acumen, more likely. I hope so. And by so doing, it could be anyone in that space. But so far, it's you. But occupying doesn't mean taking up space. Not really. I think it means a great deal more. It means you are seen, you are heard, and there is something that you must contribute to your space. There was a time in history where Torres Strait Islanders were not only allowed to complete primary school education, they were also sent to work straight after that. So grade 4, done. Out into the field you go. Thus creating limited expectations and career prospects that only made my people feel like they were deemed worthy of very little and only capable of reaching a limited amount. How does that relate to communities as a whole? I hear you ask. I hear you ask. It means this. To occupy a space in a community means you are not only represented by something bigger, you are also charged with the responsibility to make use of your space and to give back. When I was at uni, I took a first-year law subject as an elective, and it was through a placement scheme for Indigenous students. And my lecturer at the time briefly posed the theory that the colonial occupation of this country was rationalized due to them arriving and deeming the new land as having no apparent use. And when you actually look up the original Latin definition of terra nullius, that's what you're going to find. Land with no use. Hearing information like that, you can safely assume why I didn't finish uni at all. But the occupation lesson still sticks with me today, and in this new age, I feel like we can apply it a bit differently. The way I see it, to occupy, as I said, is to be seen and give back. Again, to be seen and give back. It's the best of you represented by your community, which means you have the responsibility to represent your community in the best way, in the bigger and wider world. There's a space for you out there in the wild somewhere, and therefore it's up to you to create that space for others. Contribute your time, your energy, or at least that which you are able, to occupying spaces you belong to. And hopefully, when you pass on eventually, leaving it in a better condition than when you found it. So that way, when you see me turn up at a Dungeons & Dragons game or audition for Hamilton or speaking Sindarin Elvish in Currumbin, you're not struck by the color of my skin. You're looking at me and going, wow, how cool that Lord of the Rings made it all the way to the Torres Strait Islands. Right? Something beautiful, something wonderful. How wonderful that something that promotes togetherness reaches that far. Across languages, across barriers, across cultures. Something is real here. How cool is that? Or as Martin Luther King put it, we all will be seen, as we should be, every single day, as people of beauty, intelligence, and quality. The fourth point and final point is safety. It does speak for itself, but I'll just get through it quickly for you now. So far, I've spoken to you about a lot of things, but there is one last key feature that a community has to have, and it translates into an action. So here it is. Under no circumstances must you create a community based on harm, hurt, and hatred. That is not a community. That is how you attempt to destroy a community. A community must provide safety, a refuge from the tyranny, the pain, the discrimination of the outside world. Without safety and protection from the direct threats, a community is too vulnerable, susceptible to attack, and easily destroyed. We all need somewhere safe to speak our languages without direct threat. We need spaces to conduct our rituals and activities without discrimination. We need to be in a place where we are not persecuted over petty differences. We need somewhere to freely congregate and socialize and learn from the generations surrounding us. All we need to do is provide safety. We all need people and a place that provides us with healing and understanding when we face the harder challenges of life. We need and deserve to have all of this. Something has to be reserved for us to accomplish all of this, and it has to be a place where I can go, where you can go, where we all can go when we need to. Because as you may have noticed in this country recently, or at least since October the 14th this year, there are fewer and fewer places where, as a First Nations person, I feel safe, based on the perception you all voted on. I'm not blaming anybody, I'm just pointing out that that's what the reality is for me. Without safety, you breed isolation and ostracism and all of those horrible things. And that looks like a very cold, cold world. So in conclusion, go and find your people. Go and be a bridge between them, not a barrier. Be rooted in your identity. Occupy a space for those who come after you. Create a sense of belonging, and always be a place of safety. We owe this to ourselves and all the spaces we share with. Everything I've said to you so far, I might not be entirely correct, but you don't have to completely agree with me. We just have to cooperate within this ecosystem. And my hope is for us that maybe, just maybe, our communities will be better for it. Thank you.